It says we're live. Let me double check, make sure it's showing up
We're
for us.
live.
There we are. I see us on the screen. We're good to go. Um, Welcome everybody to this next.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome to the next episode of the Creator Series. This topic is actually really special. It's on mastering your craft, and I'm really excited. And I guess before I hop into even how we connected, Dana, I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do, and then I'll share like how we connected and all that.
Yeah, sure. My name is Dana Boisson. I'm the owner and hat maker at BKMC. And I just opened up a store in Rhinebeck, New York. And yeah, my store is open Thursday to Monday. And I actually have my studio in the back. So I'm basically always here. And yeah.
Cool, that's amazing. And so you shared, well, actually, I discovered because there's a friend that shared a hat that you made for them, and I was like, wow, that's an amazing hat. I gotta check this out, and it led to just a like a rabbit hole of going through your Instagram. And these are the most amazing hats that I have ever seen, ever witnessed. And so you have just such an amazing craft. And then I went to your site and it said you've been making hats for over 8 years. And so, yeah, I thought this is a wonderful topic of just mastering your craft, because I think so many creators and entrepreneurs tend to hop around, which I think we all do that in some ways. So I think this will be a fun talk, just to understand your journey in terms of like how even doing hats came about, what it was kind of like early on in the journey versus now. So I'm happy to dive in. How about you?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. I mean, let's start at the beginning. How did hats even become a thing for you?
Well, growing up, I grew up in a household where we kind of just like, if you wanted it, you made it kind of thing. And so I've always really been into fashion and sewed growing up and went to Oneonta for apparel and textile science. When I was there, I was like, I really want to be more part of like the design aspect and the actual creating. So I went to Parsons for fashion design. And while I was there, I had, some friends that were drag queens, and I made them some headpieces. And that really kind of like got me into this kind of sector of the fashion industry. And then I found out that FIT had a millinery program. So I studied there, and that's really how the journey started. Once I started learning about hats, I kind of became obsessed with this being, my path as a maker, my path as an artist, and looked more of hats as kind of like the blank canvas of like what I was going to create. So I think I was mostly drawn to it because it was like a different part of the fashion industry. It was something that was tactile that I could make, and specific for each customer, and it just kind of like unfolded from there.
Wow, that's wonderful. And so it really sounds like for your journey, it was this element of, if you want it, you make it. And so there was a strong, it sounds like there was a strong signal for you to really follow that and to really say, if I'm interested in this, I'm gonna move towards that. Did you experience an element of like the question of what am I going to do, or do you feel like that signal was just following that everything continued to really unfold for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it really just kind of unfolded as I went. I've always been somebody that followed how I felt to like get me through where I was going in life, whether it was the correct way or not. Like I always just kind of like took these like meandering, is that the word? Meandering,
Yeah.
meandering like pathways to get to where I was. And I've always just kind of like followed feeling. And so when I knew it was right, I knew like this was the way. And it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't always easy. And there was many times, you know, that I questioned, you know, like, is this struggle worth it? Is this, you know, and I mean, at the end of the day, if it's like how I felt and the path that I was headed towards, that's just kind of like how I followed it. So
Yeah, I love that because I think sometimes you know, on the creative journey there can be an element where something's difficult and then, you know, we can really step away from it. And it sounded like for you, you know, that was a natural path of dealing with some of those challenges, but ultimately there was just such a love for the craft that it helped you move through those challenges.
yeah, I think really mastering something became really the goal. And I've always been kind of like the person, like if I'm going to set my mind to something, I want to be the best at it. It really, I do have that kind of drive, or I am like, I guess, what's the word? Just like really, I don't know, just focused. Like I, you know, I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, but do it the best. So that's really been like the end, you know, goal or passion kind of like within me is to really represent the craft like in a beautiful way, in a slow way, in a patient way. Yeah, that's really how I've gone about it.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think that is something really special, right? This idea of mastering your craft and going through that. And I think there's like this neat balance, which it sounds like you have, of wanting to, you know, be the best at something, but also for you personally, having something that you're really skilled at and being able to really own your journey, I guess is what it'd be, what I'd refer to it as. So then you, in terms of your journey, I know on your site it says you've been working on the hats for 8 years. Is that something where you've had your shop for 8 years? Yeah.
Yeah. So I got done with the FIT program. I think it was like maybe around like 2012 or 2013, and worked out of my apartment in Brooklyn for a few years, and really that took that leap to get my first studio, which is kind of the first step in saying like, yeah, this is what I'm going to dedicate, you know, my time and money to. And, you know, I always worked like side jobs. I was waitressing and, you know, waitressing during the day and creating a studio and at night or vice versa. And so, yeah, that was my first studio. And then that was in Bushwick. And then after that, I had a studio in Greenpoint. And then the pandemic hit. So from there, I kind of, again, just like readjusted. I never really know what the future is going to hold or the pathway is going to go. So I think that's something that really helped me, is like I am very adaptable. And yeah, I just felt like it was time to kind of move upstate, and this is where I am. This is where I landed.
Yeah. I mean, I see the pictures on your Instagram, and it's a beautiful shop that you created. And so for you know, anyone listening, and you know, maybe they're in their journey of where they're developing this skill, they're really trying to become, you know, great at what they do. What kind of steps, I guess, do you take? Because I when we spoke, and you spoke about opening the shop upstate, you're like, oh, this has been the easy part.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit more about what you mean by that versus, I guess, earlier in the journey? Yeah.
Yeah. I think like patience really is like such an important part of mastering something. And I think all of those years, like, you know, really hustling, like working and not knowing what you're doing, you know, the path is like so, you know, there's not a handbook on like how to be a great hat maker and business owner, you know? And so along the way, all of these steps are like, what am I doing? What do I do? I have no, you know, you make mistakes. And that really was like the hardest part to get here. Like all of those times when I, you know, made a hat and then had to tear it apart and start all over again. And I had a deadline, and, you know, maybe my skill level wasn't so high at that time that it took me a lot longer to finish things, or I thought I could do things quicker, and you definitely can't. And you know, the times when you think you can take shortcuts to get around something, and then you realize that this has just cost you way more time. You got to rip it out and start again. And those like moments that test you, those are really like the hard moments. And walking into the store for the first time after I got the keys, it really was like, oh my God, this is going to be so fun. Like, what color should I paint the wall? What am I going to do here? You know, because like the hard work is already, I mean, there's always hard work to do, but it feels like I can take like a deep breath for the first time in many, many years, that I've like landed somewhere and my skill set is at this point, and I know that my work is great, and I've built the confidence in myself in my craft. You know, and I'm always striving to do more, but there's like, it's kind of the first time, you know, in this 8-10 year journey that I can say like, you know, I'm proud of like where I've gotten to because of all of that patience. And I guess that's just what I mean by it. Like, this has been a joy to open up a shop, you know, so.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's really key, is right, like those defining moments, or those hard moments, because anytime I was reading something somewhere, and the person said, you know, anytime we're inspired by something or inspired by someone, you know, rarely is it where the person, you know, is kind of like, oh, I'm super comfortable, you know, like nothing happened.
Yeah.
The inspiring moments are those challenges that you're getting to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's important to like, you know, recognize, you know, your milestones as you're going through it, and realizing, I mean, you may not necessarily like see the path for yourself as it's happening, but you know, people around you that are watching you do this, like, it's funny how sometimes they have a clearer vision of like who you are than you do in yourself while you're in this kind of journey. And I'm lucky enough to have amazing family and friends that are incredibly supportive. And I think a lot of that was them reminding me, you know, you're amazing. Like, you know, you're doing it, and, you know, and it's important to hear that and surround yourself with people who are really like there to cheer you on. So.
Yeah. So that's another key indicator, right? Of being surrounded with the right people to cheer you on. Do you find, I know this might sound like a funny question, but, you know, sometimes when I speak with entrepreneurs, and maybe it's a little different with a, you know, a more tangible skill set, but sometimes when I'll speak with entrepreneurs, they'll kind of say, you know, my family doesn't ask a lot of questions about what I do, even if they're supportive. And, you know, sometimes I check in with them and I'm like, well, you know, are you always asking them about their job? You know, and so I feel like it's this balance of having support, but also realizing that they aren't in your world. What was, I guess, how did you balance that, or what was that kind of like?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely, if my parents are watching this, they're gonna laugh. I think that there's definitely moments that my parents were like, what is she doing? You know, like, I think my dad would have loved it if I just gotten, you know, like a secure job that, you know, didn't have so many what ifs. So they may not have always agreed with what I was doing or my choices, but I always knew that they supported me. So I think that there's just like a difference there. Like, support doesn't necessarily mean that somebody agrees with exactly what you're doing all the time, but they're still got your back, you know, and like they still respect you and they still love you. And it's just been, I mean, I'll say opening up the shop in Rhinebeck, having my parents come and finally see like what I've been doing down in the city, because they, I don't think really had a clue of, you know, even like maybe my skill set or what I was creating down there. So yeah, having them see it is always so much more kind of impactful than I could talk their ear off about like,
Right.
I got my hat on this singer and I'm, you know, I did this today or whatever. I created a new way of burning onto this hat. Like that may not really like stick in their minds, but visually seeing what I've created, not just hats, but like the community and the people around that support me even in this town. I think that that's really been like the first time maybe that they really kind of understand, you know, and I've been doing this for a long time. So, you know, I'm not like holding my breath on them really understanding. It's just, I'm just grateful that I have, you know, family and friends that, you know, support this crazy journey that I'm doing. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And yeah, I imagine that had to, you know, feel really good, right? After all those years to really, yeah, for them to be able to walk in and really see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've reached a lot of, you know, different milestones and goals. And, you know, from what I saw, it sounds like, you know, some of your work has been in Paris Fashion Week. There's been other things that really your work has shown up in. Could you share what some of those, I guess, milestones are? And then we can go into, you know, I guess what the journey was like to even have your work showcased in environments like that.
Yeah. So I've had my hats on some Nashville singers, some really amazing Nashville singers, Margot Price being one of my favorites. I've had hats in New York Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week. But really for me, I mean, all those things are really exciting, but for me, like just being able to, I mean, I don't know if this sounds cheesy or not, but like just normal customer coming in and being able to get, that's like really like most exciting for me, or like getting my studio for the first time, or you know, the first time when I didn't need to have like a side job at a restaurant, you know, those to me like stick out the most as milestones for me.
Yeah, I don't think that's cheesy at all. I think it's all part of, you know, like they say, really enjoying the process and really enjoying those meaningful moments. And I think, you know, especially depending on where someone is at in the journey, I think sometimes those things, you know, those results, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, maybe they were goals, but I guess I call them like byproducts of the work, results, that a lot of times that's a thing that I feel like when people are starting out with something seem really enticing. And then when you're in the middle of the journey, like you said, it's the not having to have the X amount of side jobs, or and to be able to really focus more on your craft, or to open the studio and to do those things. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I think, when you're first starting out, maybe, you know, people are always like, oh, you were in Vogue. And that's like, I mean, it is a great accomplishment. But I don't think people realize, like, from the outside, like, I mean, I guess, I don't know. For me, it's just like never really, it's like I get the deadline, I get the hat in, I send it off. That's amazing. But then then I have like another client I have to make a hat for. So then I'm focused on that, you know, and I mean, it is important to like kind of be proud of yourself when things like that happen. You get into editorials and stuff, but I don't think that it's like as impactful on your business as like your local customers, or like your, I mean, for me, that like, that's my base. That's my that's why I'm allowed to be here, is because of those people. So to me, that always sticks out more.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, especially because I imagine it's the, essentially it's what makes up the business and the larger part of your day, and you get to really enjoy,
Yeah.
spending that. Um, what advice would you give to someone who, I think sometimes those things, those external things can feel like the goal. Do you have any tips for them to, I guess, find joy in their craft or in the process or what they're doing, or if, if it's not necessarily advice for them, what you found really useful and helpful for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just go back to like kind of patience and like celebrating like the littler things, because yeah, I mean, I think just having patience for me, that's always been the thing. Like, yeah, something great has happened, but um, that's not gonna, shoot your company to where it wants to be overnight. And I think that for me, I always took a very like slow and steady pathway to get to where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really important, is to like focus on the product that you're working on, or sometimes we get caught up in like the marketing or the social media, and that becomes the business. But for me, the hats really have always been the business, like the reason why I'm here. And I think that it's really important to like always keep that in mind while you're building a company. Just always at the end of the day, you have to go back to why you're here. And for me, it's the hats. So that always has to be the center focus. The social media, that's all really important nowadays. But for me and my hat, like for my company and my hats, it's like we'll always just go back to the hat. So
Yeah. And I'm curious, what in terms of your journey, because I imagine as you were, learning this craft and building these hats, what's the journey been like in terms of the experimentation of, and obviously I'm not in your field, so I don't know these specifics, but in my experience of the creative journey, there's this element of following the way and then developing your style or experimenting with style. So, yeah, I'd love to hear more on that. Just for you.
Well, the hat industry is very interesting because a lot of the tools, like when I got into it, a lot of the tools that you would buy would be that you get at antique stores, or let me just show you. So like this is like a block, right, that you're gonna block a hat over. So a lot of these I got at like antique stores and stuff like that, because the hat industry has kind of, hasn't been as vibrant as it used to be, like say in the late 1800s. So a lot of the things are antiques, but I have a buddy who started making all of these blocks and stuff out of 3D printing. So that was kind of like a very cool, melding technology with like old world tools. And so when he started doing that, then your mind kind of like expands, like, okay, what else can we do with this technology? And so I think, he's been inspiring to me to kind of like, I'm like a needle and thread kind of girl, and so like to be open to like new technology in this field has been really exciting. I had a studio mate who had a laser cutter in our studio, and so then we started playing around with using that machine to laser onto felts and burn into felts. And I did a series of hats using that, and which I think I'm going to start doing again because it comes out beautifully. But things like that have been really fun to meld, new technology into this kind of like old craft.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like it's really been, to start, it was really looking at a lot of these antique aspects, and then through those connections, you were able to, well, together you were able to blend those into like,
Hmm.
I guess, a new age or like way to try and do those in an
Yeah.
updated way.
Yeah.
What?
I think it's also too a struggle to, for me, like I'm like love the past. I love antiques. I love, the craftsmanship of old stuff. And um, something I've been more aware of is like, no, you have to really just embrace where we are and the new technology that's around. Um, yeah, creating things that have never been seen before, which is really fun.
Yeah. And is there anything that you do to find or continue inspiration as you create? Because I imagine there's some hats that you're creating on your own. There's some that are requested or it's a collaborative process. Where do you find your inspiration? Because I saw some people have like clouds on their hats, some are like a
Yeah.
peacock, and so yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the best parts about doing customs is getting to know somebody and create something that's specific to their personality. When I do my collections, I really draw a lot of inspiration, either the people around me, where I'm at. It kind of just like kind of falls around. Like if you keep your eyes open, something will grab you. And for instance, like I did a whole collection this last summer with peacock feathers that was given to me from my friend who works at a bird sanctuary. And so I was able to get these like beautiful peacock feathers, and that, turned into this freehand embroidery around the peacock feathers. And yeah, it kind of just like unravels. I'll usually like play around with the concept for a couple of days, do a lot of sample embroidery on different materials, and then I just go with it. You just make a decision and kind of run with it, and usually something really beautiful comes out of it. So
Yeah. Wow. And in terms of, um, you know, growing your business, because it sounds like there's, you're mastering your craft and you're getting really good at what you do. And I imagine that, people are going to ask about someone's hat.
yeah.
What has been the process like or what things have you tried or what's been most helpful as you've grown your business to generate more traffic or to help you, help build more customers and people that you connect with?
Well, I've been really lucky that because the object that I make is worn on your head, it's pretty visible to the public. So a lot of my business is really like word of mouth and a slow grow. And just going back to like being patient and stuff, like I really think that my business has been successful because I had a small group of people wear my hats, and then those people, I do get a lot of like, hey, I saw blah 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 wearing this hat, I want one. So I think it's like really important to like treat each customer, each person who's interested in what you're doing, like give them your attention and your time and really make them feel special and show how grateful you are that they chose you to create something for them. So I think I just like have always just done like a slow and steady, like hold on tight to the people who are interested in what you're doing. And I think that that's like how I've just built customer base.
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And another question that just came to me, because there's some work that I do with artists, and a common thing that sometimes comes up because it's something that they love, that they're building their skill at, is this element of pricing throughout time. And so I was just curious what, I guess, whatever you're open to sharing in terms of how that journey has been, because I mentioned in the beginning, stuff costs less, and now that you're, way more skilled and have your own shop, there's different prices.
Yeah.
How do you, how did you navigate or manage that for yourself? Or do you have any tips to someone that might be struggling in terms of uh, them thinking of what to do? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up because I was just talking to my friend Lola, who has like always supported me from the beginning, and she was bringing up, she's like, remember when you first started, you did customs, and I think they were like $300, and I was making no money off of them, like literally like very little money, because felts are very expensive. A lot of money goes into like the base of the hat when you're making them. And we were joking about how I would spend, and back, I would spend so much time on these hats and make like $60 or like $80, you know, and I would work on them for days. And I just didn't think that anybody was going to buy a hat for more than that. And so I was like thinking kind of like the opposite. I was like trying to cater to what I thought people wanted. And, you know, I slowly raised prices based on my skill level and realizing like you were never going to be able to do this if you're going to make, you know, such a low, you know, if you're going to spend days and make no money. So I am proud of myself for really working the price up as my skill level got better. I was very cognizant of that. Like, I think it's important that you do like give yourself what you deserve at some point.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, I think, as an artist to recognize when that is or what that is. But, you know, once that one person happily buys a hat at the price that I can live a working wage at, it kind of, you know, it makes you like realize it. So, yeah, I think, you know, if you want to make a living off of this and if people want to support you and see you around, you have to price your things at what they're worth. And I have since, I mean, my hats now go from around $500 to $900. I have one in the store that's $1,400. And, you know, you just can't get it anywhere. And the work that goes into it is hours and hours and hours of, you know, my own hand sewing, and nobody else works here. It's just me. And so I know it's worth it. And that's how you can feel, I feel comfortable with the pricing, because I know how much time and care that I put into everyone's hat that I make. And I think people, you can see that in the work, and people are happy to pay what it's worth. So
Yeah. Yeah. And how did you, and I love that, I love that explanation and really the way that you shared that. Is there anything, how did you sort of assess your, did you have any indicators for yourself in terms of like assessing your progress or your skill level? I'm thinking of, you know, someone might paint or something like that. And so I feel like you said, it's so important to look back and see how much they've grown. Is there anything that I guess you did in terms of reflecting and looking back to say like, oh, I'm actually more skilled at this now, or I have improved at this?
Yeah, I think I know how many hats at the quality that I want to deliver them to the world. I know how many hats I can make in a week and still have that kind of, and I think that's recently how I've been kind of measuring, you know, my progress and, you know, where I'm at. And I know that, yeah, the quality of the hat that I'm putting out, this is how much time it takes. And so for me, it's like I can make 5 hats in a week. That's what I've recently come up with, right? So 5 hats in a week, and how much time are you spending on them? That's kind of how I assess. For me, it's like I assess by like picking up a hat and examining my own work. Like I mean, there's times customers will bring in a hat that they bought, you know, 5 years ago, and I'm like, I'm gonna redo this whole hat for you because my skill level is so different now, you know? And I think that's just how I assess. Like for me, it's, I mean, a painting is a little bit different, I guess, but for me, I have like a tactile object that like I can look at and say like, are these stitches the same length and, you know, in a straight line? Is this band put in properly? Is, you know, and that's how I assess my work.
Yeah. You know, I really like that. And it's neat, right, that you're able to say, oh, you know, someone might come back in 5 years and because you've grown to say, oh, actually, I'm going to redo something here.
Yeah.
I imagine before that point, you know, for you, you probably spent more time on the hat, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know? And there was an element of even if you're seeing that you want to improve your skill, that you want to grow, that you can still be really proud of what you did create, and someone could really enjoy that, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think like you have to have a sense of humor with yourself too. It's like, you know, when someone comes in and there's a band that I put in and, you know, I can laugh at it. Like, this is not properly put in, you know, maybe I didn't, you know, I think it's funny too, because back in the day I used like a machine for a lot of things. And now I just use a needle and thread. So I do things even slower now.
Yeah.
And it just is a better end product. So yeah, you got to give yourself some grace and, you know, laugh a little. It's like, it's all a journey. And sometimes people don't want me to change it, you know, where I'm like, this band isn't, they're like, no, like that's the original and I want it, you know. It's like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, just like you have to give yourself grace, and it's cool to see how far you come, you know, how much you've grown. And I'm sure in 10 years it'll be the same for what I'm doing right now, you know. It's like, I hope I never stop getting better. So of course the older work isn't going to be as great, but that's like the fun of it.
Yeah, it's all part of the process.
Yeah, if we were good right off the bat, it would not be as enjoyable, you know. You really, the process is the best part, so
Definitely.
gotta embrace it.
You know, I know we're starting to wind down here. You know, with the topic of mastering your craft, and I know we've spoken about so many different things. If there's someone listening and you know they're in their journey, they're reflecting on, you know, they're seeing that they're making progress, and at the same time they're like, oh my gosh, they still have so much to learn. What advice would you give them, or what would you want to say to them?
I would just say that mastering something is not quick, and time is your best friend. And I think people who are able to master a craft, just patience is like, needs to be in you. You need to have that. And you know, I think it's good to step away. I think it's good to, but the mastering part comes because you show up every day. That's where the master part comes in. And I think as long as you know, give yourself some leeway to grow and laugh at yourself and just be patient. And, you know, the hardest days and those long days are like where you mess up and you got to start over and stuff. Like, they may feel horrible at the time, but I guarantee you, when you get to a point where, you know you can't take shortcuts, you know you have to patiently do something and take your time, that's when you'll see the growth. So I would just say stay patient and just keep showing up.
Yeah, I love that distinction of, you know, you can have patience and there's still going to be these moments where you get frustrated or these challenges happen. So it's not about just, I think sometimes when I hear patience, and it's so important, that's something that I've had to develop. But I think when sometimes people hear patience, you know, it's almost like, oh, I'm not going to have any feelings, right? Like, I'm just going to be patient. So I love that you made that distinction of like, there's going to be challenges, and the patience is this element of show up each day, have grace for yourself, and really trust that process and journey.
Yeah. I recently was at a yoga retreat, and the lady said the practice of yoga is just showing up every day. And I just loved that. And I think that just is like perfect for mastering a craft. You know, it's just, you'll master it if you just keep showing up. So
yeah, love it. Thank you so much for really taking the time to talk and to share your
Yeah.
journey. I know that I got a lot out of it personally. So thank you so much. And I know, we already got a couple comments here, people saying good morning and different stuff. So I think it was, really valuable. And, in case anyone is looking for a hat or they want to visit your shop, could you share the location of your shop and also any social media that they should go to?
Yeah, so the shop in Rhinebeck is located at 71 East Market Street. It's right across from the fire department. I'm just looking at it right now. And my Instagram is BKMC. And my website, you can go to thebkmc.com. My store is open from Thursday to Monday from 11 to 6. And if you're thinking about wanting a hat and you're not sure, how to proceed, or if you feel very comfortable with like knowing what you want, I would just say reach out to me, because it is a weird thing to get a hat on your head that you're walking around with, and it's a weird object, and it's fun, and we have fun doing it. So even if you don't know what you want, or exactly what you want, just reach out, say hi, and we can get the process started.
Cool. I love it. Thank you. And for anyone that is, wanting to see this interview or see more interviews like this, they can go to givememygoodies.com. It's a little website I made, so it's easy to access. And thank you. Thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks, James. This was fun.
Cool. You got it. See you, everybody. Bye.